Hi there, welcome to Thursdays at Home, a live streamed hour of performances, readings, and more from IU students, faculty, and staff, brought to you by the IU Arts and Humanities Council. My name is Anna Groover, and I'm a council intern and your host this evening. Singing and dancing and creating and writing and making music are always important, but they're even more important right now when we're all physically distant from each other. So we're glad you can join us to celebrate these artistic practices in many forms. Tonight, you'll be hearing from professor and opera singer Jane Dutton, who will be giving us an in-depth look at how opera students are practicing and auditioning during the pandemic and what the Jacobs School of Music's opera program has planned for this semester. Visiting lecturer and director Michael Schell will also be joining us later in the program to share some of his experiences and plans for the fall program. Let's get started. Jane Dutton is a professor of voice at the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music. An Indiana native, she earned her Bachelor of Music and Master of Music degrees from Indiana University and an artist diploma from Yale University. She has sung in many of the top opera houses in the world, including the Metropolitan Opera, San Francisco Opera, Los Angeles Opera, English National Opera in London, Gran Teatro del Liceo in Barcelona, and New York City Opera, first as a mezzo-soprano and now as a dramatic soprano. Dutton made her European opera debut at Barcelona's Gran Teatro del Liceo and was re-engaged by the theater for 10 seasons. She has sung several seasons at London's English National Opera, most recently appearing as Kundry in Parsifal. In the United States, she has sung Jordan Baker in John Harbison's The Great Gatsby and Stefano in Romeo and Juliet, as well as numerous other roles for the Metropolitan Opera. In addition to her appearances in major US opera houses, she has sung with more than 25 US regional opera houses in more than 30 different major roles. She has been awarded prizes in many competitions, including Placido Domingo's Operalia. Thank you for joining us, Jane.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. I am thrilled to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, which would be IU Opera Theater. Since, for those of you who don't know, IU Opera Theater has been around since 1948, when at the Dean of the School of Music at that time, Wilfred Bain, was charged by Herman Wells to redesign the music school and make it one of the premier music schools in the country, if not the world. And Dean Bain did just that. And a lot of it centered around the opera theater. And his whole premise was to have an opera sung in Bloomington, Indiana, every Saturday night in English. Now, things have changed a little bit. We no longer do things in English because we now have super titles and it makes it much more accessible for the audience. Then the School of Music took a giant step forward in 1972 when they built the Musical Arts Center. And that gem is unique to any university in the country, or it's unique to Indiana, and it's very different from any university in the country. No other university has quite a theater like that for opera production. Of course, the Musical Arts Center during a normal time is filled with concerts, operas, ballets, but the weekends sometimes are reserved for the operas, or that is the tradition. So for over 70 years, that tradition has been alive and well on the Bloomington campus. Graduates of Jacobs School of Music in the opera department or voice department are gracing stages all around the world and have for the entirety of that 70 plus years. It is a unique gem on the Bloomington campus. And in a good year, I'm going to share my screen so I can share a little bit about what it is supposed to look like. Normally, in this lovely building, we would see things that resemble, whoops, I'm having problems now sharing my screen. So there we go, thank you. Normally we would see productions like this. This is pretty standard production. If you notice very carefully, there are a lot of people on stage. There are very few that have 6 feet between them. Notice in this one, all of the props that everybody would be touching. Again, seems very strange in our COVID world right at this moment to see quite a production like this. There's another one that involves a lot of people again, nobody at 6 feet. Very much, definitely not social distancing. Of course, none of them are using masks during this. So you can see the challenges that we have with the opera theater and moving forward in this COVID world. So what are the productions going to look like, or what are we doing? Way back a year ago is probably when one of the committees at the Jacob School of Music started picking titles for the year previously, because our productions are very extensive and require a lot of moving parts. Planning begins very early. And we had this wonderful season with 6 titles. 2 of them were going to be runouts, which means that we were going to take one in the first semester to a different city, as well as Bloomington, and another one to yet an additional city as well as Bloomington. Unfortunately, all those plans got changed. So in March, when it looked like things were going to be significantly changed, we started planning as to what the opera was actually going to look like. And in that planning, when I look back now, some 5 months later, I realized that maybe we didn't fully understand the extent of this virus and what it was going to mean specifically to singers. So what I will say is the one common thing that has been a thread throughout the entire planning for the operas is that no matter what form these operas would take, the process is the most important part for the students, for the education of them all auditioning for roles, then those who got cast learning the roles, being coached on the roles, then rehearsed in the roles, and then hopefully some sort of performance. And whether that would take on a more concert version aspect, whether it would be with mass, without, at that point in time, we did not know, but we knew one thing was for sure, that the 70+ year tradition was not going to end because of a virus. And I think in this day and age, when arts are being canceled right and left, and that is every type of music, it's being canceled, dance, a lot of things being canceled. We need art more than ever. So I applaud the Jacob School of Music and all of the people involved that we're going to soldier on, and they're going to put it on in some form or fashion. So here is a little bit about the process. Normally twice a year, we have what are called cattle call auditions. And during those auditions, the singers who have appropriate roles to audition for get up on the stage at the Musical Arts Center and sing an audition aria. They all have to be under 4 minutes, and it's one right after another. And this is in front of an open audience, actually. So all of their peers, but most importantly, the faculty of both the opera and of the voice departments will be there to vote on their favorites. Then a committee casts the opera, double cast the opera. So there are 2 people on each part, and then they proceed to start learning them and then start in the process of learning what an opera singer actually does. Well, this year was a little bit different. Because none of us could be with each other, we had to do everything by video submission. Now, these videos took many different forms. Not everybody could be in a room with a pianist. In fact, very few were in rooms with pianists because most people could not, you were supposed to be quarantining and you could not be with another person that you didn't live with. So, or in a space that you couldn't be socially distanced from. So most people used pre-recorded tracks, and that is kind of problematic as well because everything has to be exactly the same tempo, and you don't have much creativity or artistic freedom when you're using a pre-recorded track. So most of the auditions were done that way. There were some people that could not get either of the other 2 options to work and did sing a cappella. And what I think is amazing is that from my memory, three different ways, somebody got cast using any of those different ways. So it wasn't just that they took the quality of the recording, they really took the performance of the singer into account. It was quite a chore because each faculty member watched over 200 videos. And everybody this time, instead of singing whatever they wanted, there were specific excerpts that they needed to do from each of the shows. So it was quite a lot of hours put in from everybody. And it was wonderful to see the variety and the variety of ways people chose to film their things. Some people staged it within their apartments or their houses. Some people did it more concert version. Some people did close-ups like this. Some people did full body shots. It was very interesting. And there, again, no parameters. You just filmed it the best way that you could. So what I think would be great is that if I share over the course of this discussion, I share a couple of these audition videos. These are a couple of videos of successful candidates. So in other words, meant that they auditioned for a particular role and they got cast as that particular role. I do want to mention that when we did this casting or when we did these video submissions, we were auditioning for the first 3 shows of the fall semester. And that was supposed to be Rossini's Barber of Seville, followed by Marchedama's Little Women, then followed by Puccini's La Bohème. As the handwriting was more on the wall and we could see that probably an orchestra was not going to be able to be in an orchestra pit for the fall semester, we felt that La Bohème would be better served to be moved to the spring semester. So we ended up getting rid of one title, unfortunately, and only having 2 shows for the fall semester and then 3 shows for the spring semester. Our hope is that things improve enough that maybe we can have an orchestra for some of the spring. Maybe we can have a full chorus for some of the spring shows. We're going to keep our fingers crossed and think very optimistically. Unfortunately, for the fall shows, there will not be an audience and there will not be an orchestra. It's just too many people in a space, and we want to make sure first priority in doing this kind of endeavor is that everybody is safe. And that has been accounted for in every nook and cranny of the decisions that are being made. And in this case, we felt that doing the 2 shows were doable, relatively small casts for both of the shows, and could be done with very little chorus or no chorus, and could be easily done with a piano. So this was the option. So again, I say that on August 13th. When these shows actually happen, I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest with you. I don't think any of us know what's going to happen because things change, as we all know, very quickly. By the way, things change is one of the main themes in Marchedama's Little Women, which is the piece I'm going to start with. So things change. In this piece, I'm going to show an audition video of one of the singers that was cast as Jo March. And Jo March is the lead character in Little Women. This opera is based on Louisa May Alcott's beloved book, Little Women, about 4 sisters and how they grow up and become adults. And Jo March does not, and in this aria, is very frustrated that life is changing. She would prefer not to have her life change at all, and that all of her sisters stay close with her, and the core of the family will stay as one. So in this aria, she sings about her frustration. It's called "Couldn't I Unbake the Breads?" So couldn't she just redo everything and not have everybody changed? So the singer that we're going to get to hear, her name is Grace Skinner. She's a mezzo-soprano. She is finishing her master's degree this fall semester. She is from the state of Washington. She got her undergraduate degree at Portland State University. She has been a fellow at the Aspen Music Center. This past summer, she participated in a virtual version of the Music Academy of the West. She has appeared in a couple of times with IU Opera Theater. She was Cesare in Handel's Giulio Cesare, and she was Cherubino in The Marriage of Figaro last season. So I'm going to share this video with you, and this was her audition for Jo March. She was one of the lucky ones who was able to be in a room with a pianist. So let me work on organizing my screen so we get all set. And here we are. Couldn't I unbake the breads?
Grace Skinner, and today I'd like to sing Couldn't I Unbake the Breads from Mark Adamo's Little Women. Couldn't I unbake the breads? Unweave the mittens? Unfeed the cats, you shrink back to kittens? Just give me a moment to unbake the beds, unbrew the tea, paste every fallen leaf back on the tree. I'll just need a moment, my fancy time, an immovable line. Why not as a ball of magical twine? Rewind the spoon. April Fool. No one's fighting or flirting, not deceiving, denying. No one's hurting, no one's leaving, no one's dying. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. So just watch me untrim the boughs, unslice the pies, blow every snowfall back up to the skies. Just need a moment, and all of us can say the words, and cry the chants, and ring the wedding chimes, bring back the happy times. Only give me a moment. No, 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 not all the moments.
So that gives you a little bit of taste of what Little Women is all about, and what one of the singers is, how one of the singers auditioned for the role. I will mention that Grace is actually a student of mine, and we were going to also play a short excerpt from a lesson that we had. She is still in the state of Washington, so she and I have been meeting via Zoom to work on the role, because she'll start rehearsals shortly after she gets back to Bloomington. And in true technology form, because we were so far away from each other yesterday, and I'm in Indiana and she's in the state of Washington, the lag time was so bad in the lesson that we were going to record, it just would not have been worth showing. So I apologize for that, but it shows you how difficult this process is when you have a collaborative art form like opera, and it is highly collaborative, multiple people involved. And you aren't allowed to be in the same room as that person, or a lot of the same people. So it makes it quite difficult. But we are making the best of it. And again, the mission is to let the students go through the process, because that is the most important part about the education. I will say that I do think that IU is unique in this way. I venture to say, I don't know all of the peer institutions and what they're doing, but I venture to say that most of them are not planning full productions, and certainly not 5 full productions. And what enables us to do that is the Musical Arts Center. The stage of the Musical Arts Center is very, very large if you've not been in the space. It is purportedly 1 foot bigger than the stage of the Metropolitan Opera. It was built that way on purpose. And what it allows with the social distancing, and there is special social distancing rules for singers, whereas everybody else needs to be 6 feet away or 60 square feet. For singers and wind players, it is 100 square feet. And so the stage is so big at the Musical Arts Center that you can still get 31 people on that stage, so appropriately socially distanced, so 100 square feet in between everyone. So it's pretty, we are very fortunate to be able to, we could not even entertain doing anything that people are talking about if we did not have that facility. So we are very, very lucky. In doing a socially distanced opera, the thing that changes the most is the stage direction. So I thought it would be a great idea to talk to Michael Schell, who will be directing both Little Women and Barbara Seville in the first semester. And I thought it would be a great idea to have a conversation with Michael, talk to him a little bit about what his plans are. And again, these plans might change given the way things are changing right and left. So I'm not going to hold you to any of your answers, Michael.
Okay, good. Okay.
But I did think it would be a really interesting conversation to think how when I showed those pictures where people are on top of each other and in space and holding props and all this, how do you even go about creating a socially distanced opera?
Yeah, that's a good question. So
one that keeps you up at night, probably.
Yeah, actually it did. It did for a little while there. Yeah, so it's one of the things you just pointed out, the closeness, the intimacy that you see on stage that we're so familiar with as we are in life. Having 10 square feet for every singer, is going to have this impact on not only how the students feel or the performers feel, the singing actors feel, but whatever form we end up presenting it in, either if it's filmed or whatever, it's going to have an effect on the audience, how we perceive that and how we. So, one of the things I'm thinking about is considering, how do I change or maybe redefine what physical intimacy looks like? Now, I don't have all of the answers yet, but the concept of the show, I think, is one of the things that I really had to start to think about. How am I going to present it? And then does that concept allow for the distance? Does it, regardless of what the story is in terms of, or the way it's been presented, how does that allow for a more theatrical take? So those are the things that I keep thinking about. And I could go on about Little Women, for example. Whenever I start a show, I always think about what is the theme of the story, or what is the story about? And then how can I theatricalize that on stage? So with Little Women, the opera does a really great job of musicalizing the character and the spirit of those people. And, the other thing that Mark Adamo really focused on was embarking on a way of creating a very clear conflict, because that's one of the things that's not necessarily what you read Little Women for. You read it for learning about themselves and growing up and their lives change. It's sort of like this snapshot of a family in that time. And and how they evolved and how they changed. But there's no, even though there are plot points that occur that change things, it's not one protagonist against, the antagonist. And so Mark Adamo was trying to do that in some way. And he actually found his inspiration. And I thought this was really interesting. One of the things that was inspiring to him were these two quotes. And one is by Hugo von Hofmannsthal from Der Rosenkavalier, the Strauss opera. And the quote is, and I was going to read it in German, but now I'm a little nervous, so I'm not. So the quote translated is, "When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things." The other quote was from St. Paul the Apostle in Corinthians. And I unfortunately thought I had it there, but I don't. But it is about time. I'm sorry, that was the quote from the Bible that I just read. So the other quote from Der Rosenkavalier had to do with someone wanting to stop all of the clocks, just so they could enjoy this one moment in time. And so Mark Adamo really sort of attached himself to the idea that Joe was fighting against time, the passage of time. And that passage of time includes all of the things that they talk about in the libretto. There's so many times where they refer to things changing. One of the big arias is "Things Change, Joe." And she is so resistant. She fights her own growth and her sister's, because she knows deep down that growing up means in some ways growing apart. And so it's interesting to me when you look at it like that, how poignant that is for us right now, when we're not always able to be with the people that we want to be with. The fear of losing that connection and what that could do to us, I think is something that we can tap into very easily right now, having been so separate. Even when we're in those socially distant gatherings, you still can't hug your friends. You still can't get close. You can't really sit around a dining room table with just friends, so unless they're in your tight circle of quarantine people. So I think in exploring those ideas and sort of delving into the psychology of what loss means, or the fear of change, it's allowed me to sort of free up my mind and go, okay, since this is a flashback, ostensibly the show begins at the end, and then Joe, after this aria, unbake the breads, she's basically looking back and seeing, how could I have changed it? What could have changed in order to maybe keep everything the way it was? And then she learns at the end that it's actually better, that it has moved on, even through the loss of a sister, the various losses that occurred. She comes to terms with change. And so conceptually, theatrically speaking, that opens up a lot for me when it's a flashback. And so the distance, having such distance between the characters, can actually be a theatrical benefit. As Joe is reliving it, she can be so distant from it that she's looking to the memories of what happened, rather than it being an actual realistic depiction of what happened. So it's actually very exciting. I mean, like, I don't want them to come back and say that I have to keep 12 square feet distance, even though at the max age, I could still do it. I could still do it. But I'd like to settle on the 10 and be okay with that for now.
Yes, at least for the first show. If it has to expand for another one, great. So
Right.
Jacobs School of Music is really, really fortunate to have Michael as a visiting lecturer. Michael is, he started his college career as a singer. He got his undergrad and master's degree at University of North Carolina School for the Arts. And so what that means for a singer, that means he's a singer's director. In other words, he understands that he's asking for, when he asks for certain things, how difficult it may or may not be if you're singing high notes or singing very fast notes. And so singers love to work with singing directors, and Michael is one of them. Michael is very active out in the professional career, as well as we try to keep him here as much as possible. And you can see why from his brilliant explanation as to how he's going to work through social distancing. And it actually makes the opera sound actually quite deep, whereas sometimes it's presented, I hate to say it, but a little fluffy. And I think there's a lot underneath it, and I think that your concept is going to be really, really good with that. So Michael is directed at Atlanta Opera and Pittsburgh Opera and Opera Theater St. Louis and Santa Fe, all around. So he's very much in tune with the professional world. So there are a lot of cancellations in the world of opera right now.
Yeah.
Many of our colleagues are out of work, and I guess my question to you is, how important do you think it is that we decided to keep doing these operas and not just cancel? I mean, I know how important do you think it is, and why is it important for our students, and why is it important maybe for arts in general?
Right. I think definitely when it comes to the students, you think about the amount of money that they spend to come to school, the point in their lives, a lot of them are at the master's level, where they're getting to that point where they're going to make that next step into the business. And to lose an entire year of performance opportunity, of practicing and putting to the test those skills, the acting skills, as in combination, first and foremost, with what they're doing technically. It's paramount to them really, going out and trying to have a career. If they don't have this place at school where they can fall on their face, make a mistake and learn, and then, and grow, it could, it makes it very difficult to do that on the road, as a professional singer, where every time you are entering into a rehearsal, that you're only as good as your last rehearsal. And so in school, it allows us to say to them, you know what, today it was good, but you could do better. And so having us try to keep the operas going, I think is going to help keep what we're trying to do as teachers going, and give them that even if it's not in front of an audience, that performance edge, which is something that you and I were talking about earlier, which I'm still trying to work out, but we can talk about that later. But having that put it to the test in front of something, getting up and doing the whole thing with blocking, thinking about the character, putting all of those pieces together, that's really the point of a school doing productions. Yes, there is another benefit. The community gets great art. They get to see these up and coming singers, and also the school is enriched because the art is so good, and students from all over can come see something that they probably would never see at another school. So that is really important. But putting all of those skill sets together in the production, that's the point of it. And what they take away from that is primary to whether or not they're going to grow.
Right. You alluded to what sort of performance it will actually take place. And I do know that all of these questions are really unanswered. I know that there's been a lot of experimentation with different companies doing a virtual opera and highlighting certain things. I know other places have different ideas, but I know you have had some experience this summer putting together a virtual opera for Reimagining Opera for Kids, which is a nonprofit that is associated with the Jacobs School of Music, that in a normal year would take a children's opera into community, mostly schools and other community centers, all in Southern Indiana, to bring arts in an art outreach program. Of course, that can't be done that way this year, so it has to be filmed. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with ROK?
Yeah, that was definitely a learning curve, because we had just gotten done sort of getting through the end of that spring semester. And by that point, figured out, at least for me, when I was coaching students, often I would have them make a video prior. So then I could watch it with them on Zoom. I could share the screen like you did tonight with Grace's audition. And we could work that way, and a little bit live because they would have a recording. But when it came to doing something with more than one person at the same time on Zoom, the first rehearsal, it totally broke down. I mean, audio wise, it just wasn't going to happen. And so I basically had to adjust myself to not hearing or seeing things lined up, and sort of just went, okay, I think that's happening at the right time. Okay, that's happening at the right time. And then I would have to check with them to make sure that they knew, where to go. But I guess I should start off by saying the conceit of the whole thing is that we were going to rehearse it via Zoom, everyone in their own spaces, and then send a video camera pack essentially to each of the singers, and it would travel to the various singers. It included a camera, tripod, and a green screen that was set up so that it would be behind them and then on the floor. And so in the staging process, I had to choreograph it more before working with them, because there wasn't going to be that sort of natural give and flow that give and take that you find in a rehearsal process, where I will have my ideas and I'll say, let's try going down stage about here around this time. And then through the process, we as the artists discover, oh, no, it needs to be at this point. That's where it makes sense. And you work together because you're reacting to the singers in the space, but they couldn't react to anybody because all they saw was me and them and the others in the screens. So looking to where someone else was going to be very problematic. So I had to really isolate, okay, at this line, you need to look straight ahead off in this direction, because that's where, Kate's going to be. And then Isabella's going to be over here. So she's here, she's here. Now, the other problem with Zoom is that you can't rearrange the windows. So often, depending on who signed on, if I had somebody stage left, like for example, stage left, and they were on the screen on the right, I was just like, it was so difficult to remember where they are. So I was constantly saying, okay, are you stage left or stage right? And they're like, no, I'm right. Okay. So that part of it added another complication. But eventually, through the repetition of doing it and them practicing it on their own and then sending videos to me so I could watch and see how it's timed out, then we were able to get it to a point where they felt really comfortable. And then this is what they would do. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you what the green screen part looked like in one image. So this is, we've got the lead Anna on the left, and then the other character of Robbie on the right. So those two are in their own spaces, and the editor switched their positions for the editing, because typically what would happen is I'd get on here and Kate would be on the left, or on my left when I look on my left, and Robbie would be on the right, and they were supposed to be the opposite sides. So that's what it looked like when they were videoing on their own. And this is what it looks like this is the first edit of things, but this is what it looks like when we add the backdrop. And that's Bryant Park. And so it looks like they're standing and sitting. There is a little fuzz, sort of gradation that's going to be worked out, but it ultimately, and I watched this scene, it ultimately kind of came together in a really fun way. Now, what's great about it is that it is for kids. So this kind of fantastical, not, them floating around a little bit, it works for the show. It works for the idea behind the show. And there's some other effects that we're going to do in other scenes that'll be a lot of fun. But speaking of this in the, sort of what's going on elsewhere, I have a friend who just did, I think maybe one of the first virtual reality operas.
Oh, dear.
Now, I'm not sure how that's really going to work, because I don't know what the audience is going to have to watch it on, if they're going to have the whole thing, the helmet and everything. But there's a lot of things going on right now where people are trying different ideas using technology as a way to keep arts going. The problem is not every company can afford that technology. So it's not necessarily I don't want to say it's not a viable choice to do things. It's not a sustainable choice for most opera companies.
Right.
So if they could fund a production where they do a whole movie and it's sort of using media or whatever, that's going to be their year, most likely. That's going to be the one thing they focus on. So there's a lot of ideas going out there. There was a Zoom opera that the first Zoom opera occurred, and it was more like the music style was aleatoric. So what I mean by that is that a person would sing for a while with some accompaniment, and then they would stop, and then somebody else would sing. So it wasn't dependent on keeping a strict time. So the conductor would just be like, okay, now it's your turn, and you go. And now it's your turn, and you go. And of course, there was latency issues with that as well.
Right.
The lag of time. So there's a lot of things bubbling, but the majority of the directors that I know have lost a lot of gigs. They've lost a lot of work. And so when I think about the fact that I'm able to still create during this time, I feel very lucky. I also feel a little guilty for my friend, because I have this job where I get to do this still. But I think it's really important for us to keep going because like you said before, right now we need something that's going to a little bit takes us out of where we are. Now, some of that is going to be difficult because we have to wear masks. We have to have the mask. So I'm trying to figure out how can I incorporate the mask into the design of the way it looks so that the masks are not just like these random masks that we see all over the place, which are great, but that they have a character or a purpose that works with it. I wanted to talk just a little bit about Barbara Seville too, because that was something that I'm going to directly pull from our experience right now. Talking about this where opera companies are canceling, I do know that some of them they've been streaming productions of the past. Like one of my productions, Opera Philadelphia streamed part of their digital festival that happened at the latter part of last season in May, or I think it was in May. And so one of the ideas I thought was, okay, well, what if it was this random opera company that decided to do an audio stream where they were going to do like an old-fashioned radio play where each of the characters were going to have props that they would use only to make noise. Like we may have a Foley artist to do like a door handle or, footsteps and all that kind of stuff. The inspiration came from Frasier, actually. There's a great episode where they do a radio play. It's so much fun. But that kind of zaniness of trying to do that, people entering into it like they have a backstory of being an artist who's first time coming back to see all of their friends. They've got the masks on, they're hand sanitizing. One of the characters, Ambrosio, I'm going to make a germaphobe, and he's going to go around mopping and probably have, well, I'm not going to give it away. I don't want to give
all
it
of it away, yeah.
But that's the idea, embracing the time that we're in a little bit. So.
Right. Can I ask you a question? I'm going to put you on the spot right now. I apologize.
Okay.
There was at one point in time talk about rehearsing outside. Is that still a possibility?
Yes, it is. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to do, because part of the concerns right now is that it's not just the singing, it's the length of time you're in a space and how many people are in that space. So we are hopefully getting a tent on the side to put somewhere around the MAC. It may be on the parking lot by the loading dock. It may be somewhere else, but that space we will go between going from indoors to outdoors to back to indoors. And the rehearsal chunks are going to have to be about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And then have like a 10-minute break for everybody to go outside. Then we rehearse again. Then we have maybe another 10-minute break, go inside. That means that space has been empty for 50 minutes. We'll have cleaned whatever we needed to clean. They'll come back in, rehearse, and then we take a dinner break. So that's the idea.
Right.
Now, of course, we're in Indiana, and then we're going to get to mid-October.
And it's going to be cold.
It's going to be cold. So I don't know how long it's going to last. Hopefully it'll get us through at least mid-October.
What I was thinking is that I thought maybe if because your idea sounds so creative that I just hope that there's a way that somehow a film version can be put together of highlights or something, because it sounds so inventive that I hate for people not to see it.
Right.
And maybe, you know, if there's a tent, maybe as people stroll through campus to go to a class or something, they actually get to see a part of a rehearsal. And as long as they appropriately social distance.
Right, exactly.
But I think that would be a wonderful way to bring an audience in. I'm going to ask you one final question that is not about COVID.
Okay.
Pre-COVID, this has to be the most difficult directing challenge you've had. I don't think anybody would question that. I think as all teachers and most people that have interactive jobs, this has been the most trying times to try to get your job done to the best of its ability. So before this, what was the most challenging circumstance you had as a director?
Are we talking challenging, like, because it was just like, you know, difficult cast or difficult conductor?
Well, or a physical, like, you know.
Physical production challenging.
Yeah, that, you know, it had to be on the side of a bus, or I don't know.
Okay, well, I probably will say then, because while there have been challenges in various productions, technically speaking, I bet the first opera I ever directed was the most challenging, because it was in some church in upstate New York, and it was a very strange kind of altar where it had a stairwell that led up. It was in the center. It led to a very small platform, but with a big organ behind it. Then there was very small walkway to these other little platforms that were like pulpits, and that was kind of it. And I was doing The Daughter of the Regiment.
Oh my God.
And so this is the first show. So Daughter of the Regiment, which is usually a big chorus show, I had like 7 guys who were in the chorus. So it was like a scouting party. It wasn't a regiment. And the other part of that was that the church was overrun by mice. It was in the middle of upstate New York. So there was food that people sometimes left like boxed up, and the next day you'd find it was eaten. I mean, like it was ripped into. But I think the biggest challenge was the fact that I had the chorus for maybe 2, I think I had them for 2 solid days. But, and the opening night performance, the conductor, and there wasn't an orchestra, it was a piano, a French horn, and literally a drum set. And the guy was just making up the part. I mean, it was like, you know, jazz version of Daughter of the Regiment. And so the pianist decided that they were going to do the overture, and we had never done that. And I was like, why are we doing it? You don't have anything but a piano and drums. So she did it, and there was no stage manager. So back behind the altar, these 7 guys were waiting for the show to start. She decided it right before. There were like 10 people in the audience, and 5 of them were my friends and family. And so they start the overture, and as soon as they start the music, these 7 guys come out. Now the overture is like 7 minutes long, and they're standing out there. They're ready for the first scene where it's the peasants, and they're going to fight the army that's coming in. And they're looking around, and I'm in the back of the church, and it's my first show. So I'm back there, and I'm mouthing, go back. And one guy looks at me, and he goes, he goes back. So I think that was probably the most challenging situation I've ever had.
I love that story. I love that story. Okay, I'm going to get us back on track.
Okay, sorry.
No, I love that. I'm the one who asked the question. I would love to play another audition video. And this is of Barbara Seville. This is the title character of Barbara Seville. This is a baritone named Ian Rucker. Ian is from Wisconsin. He got his undergrad degree. He's a second-year master's student studying with Carol Vaness. And he got his undergrad degree at University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. He's done a lot of different roles. Papageno, recently actually in Bloomington with the Bloomington Chamber Opera. In fact, fun fact, not for anybody except me, but that was the last opera production I have been to. That was right as everything was closing down on March 13th or 14th, something like that. He sung Giovanni at IU. He last fall he did Count Almaviva in The Marriage of Figaro, and then of course this fall we'll be singing the title character of Figaro in The Barber of Seville. This aria that he auditioned with, it's a cut down version. We have to keep things under 4 minutes for these submissions, and this aria is longer than 4 minutes, so it has some weird cuts in it. Just so if there's some real opera fans out there, you're going to notice some of these cuts, but we get a lot of the main themes in it. And in this aria, Figaro is basically, it's his entrance aria, and entrance arias were pretty common in the bel canto repertoire, and it's one of the few places where a character gets to break the fourth wall, that they just sing right to the audience. And so this is his singing right to the audience. So let's hear Ian sing Largo al factotum.
Good afternoon, my name is Ian Rucker, and today I'll be singing Largo al factotum from the Barber of Seville with additional consideration for Marcello and Chenard. Largo factotum nella città, largo, la 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 la, fortunatissima per verità, bravo, la 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 la. Fortunatissimo per verità, fortunatissimo per verità, la 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 la. Più il giorno sempre d'intorno in giro sta, qui nel cucagna per un barbiere che da più nobile non si dà, la 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 la. Rato i pettini, lancia dei forbici, al mio comando tutto qui sta, lancia dei forbici, rato i pettini, al mio comando tutto qui sta. Vela risorsa, poi dal mestiere, con la donnetta, col cavaliere, con la donnetta, tra la 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 la, col cavaliere, tra la 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 la, che bel vivere, che bel piacere, che bel piacere, per un barbiere di qualità, di qualità. Tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, donne e ragazzi, vecchi fanciulli, quella parrucca, presso la barba, quella sanguigna, presso il biglietto, tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, tutti mi chiedono, tutti mi vogliono, quella parrucca, presso la barba, presso il biglietto. Figaro, 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 ahimè, ahimè, che furia, ahimè, che folla, uno alla volta, per carità, per carità, per carità, uno alla volta, uno alla volta, uno alla volta, per carità. Figaro, sono qua, Figaro, sono qua, Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro qua, Figaro là, Figaro su, Figaro giù, Figaro su, Figaro giù, pronto sono come il fulmine, sono factotum dalla città, della città, della città, della città, della città. Ah, bravo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, ah, bravo Figaro, bravo, bravissimo, fortunatissimo, 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 per verità, la 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 la, fortunatissimo, 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 per verità, sono il peccatum per la città, sono il peccatum per la città, della città, della città.
I love that aria. It's such a great piece. So I hope in some ways we'll be able to show the public some part of both of these operas. And my hope is that in the spring semester, where the three shows that are slated for the spring semester, Xerxes by Handel, Britten's Turn of the Screw, and Puccini's La Boheme, that it'll be closer to our normal grand opera type productions. So I will be thinking optimistically, but I'm excited about what the students get to do in the fall semester, and I know that they will learn a lot from it. Thank you, Michael, for talking to me about all of this, and thank you to the IU Arts and Humanities Council for letting us sort of take over their broadcast today.
Thanks for sharing your art and practice with us, Jane, Michael, and the rest of IU Opera. It was just really heartening to see what sorts of innovations you're making to make art happen this fall, so thank you for that. And we're also just grateful for your time and devotion to your work and your generosity in sharing it with our community.
It's our pleasure as educators. Yes. It's our pleasure, trust me. We get as much out of it as they do.
Oh, that's good to hear. Have a good evening, you both.
You too.
So if you've missed any of our previous Thursdays at Home or Confronting Racism episodes, you can find those videos on our website or on the IU Bloomington YouTube channel. Tonight is the last episode of our Thursdays at Home series for now. Thank you to everyone who tuned in or joined us as guests. It's been a joy getting to experience all that IU's creative community has to offer the world. The A&H Council has a lot of other programming happening this semester, though, so keep an eye on our social media accounts. We'll be announcing upcoming programs soon. Thanks for joining us, and have a great evening.